on social media, on our social media platforms, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My name is Nikisha Burchell. I'm the Communications Director here at the Office of the Leader of the Opposition. It's back to school time, and the education spokespersons from the opposition are ready to speak with you about the level of preparedness that we're seeing or not seeing ahead of September morning. This team is led by Senator Damian Crawford. Senator Damian Crawford is the opposition spokesperson on education and community development, and he's supported by a team of qualified, experienced, and energetic young people who have a passion for service and a passion for education. Today, you will hear from 3 of them, including the senator, beginning with the youngest of the bunch. We will start with newly elected Councillor Wynette Strawn, who is the junior spokesperson on education and on community development, and she will speak with you about the reopening of school, what to expect, what we're hearing, what we're not hearing. Following Councillor Strawn, we will hear from Dr. Kenneth Russell. Dr. Kenneth Russell is a PhD with training and years of experience in education. He will speak to you about the status of the school plant, the physical plant. How are they ready to accept the new students who will return September morning? And of course, our Senator Damian Crawford will give you a comprehensive look on what to expect in September from migration, attrition, teachers, and of course, he will speak to you about the results coming from the latest CXC exams. Jamaica, the opposition has prepared a team that has solutions, but also have the foresight to look at what exists and what should be different to ensure that we prepare children who will have the educational fortitude to build Jamaica in years to come. We now invite Councillor Strawn for her presentation. She will be followed by Dr. Kenneth Russell and then Senator Crawford.
Members of the media. So today I stand before you to address pressing concerns regarding the readiness of our schools to reopen following the impact of Hurricane Beryl. While the Ministry of Education has assured us that the recovery efforts are proceeding well, yet we do not have the full details on the overall status of the Priority 1 schools. One major concern for us relates to the status of some Priority 1 schools, as reports from various stakeholders, including school administrators, parents, and community leaders, suggest otherwise. We need details from the ministry on the status of the schools, including the completion timeframe. Another major concern is the adequacy of the temporary spaces recommended for use while schools undergo repairs. There have been complaints about the lack of proper class separation in these makeshift facilities, which raises serious concerns for us about whether any retrofitting has been done to make these spaces functional for learning. If we are to ensure a safe and conducive environment for our students, the ministry must provide clarity on what retrofitting has been done to these temporary spaces. Have they been adequately prepared to handle the different needs and areas and classes for our schools? Or are we merely placing students in any available space, irregardless of their learning needs? So plans for schools with delayed openings. So really, if we are to ensure a safe and conducive learning environment for our students, the ministry must provide clarity on what retrofitting has been done to these temporary spaces. So another major concern we must address is the plan for schools that will not be able to open for the scheduled September. The ministry has yet to provide a clear strategy for how these schools will make up the mandated 190 school days. So we ask, what is the plan to ensure that our students do not fall behind in their education? Is there a strategy in place for extending the school year? Or will additional instructional hours be added to the school day? These are questions that require immediate answers if we are to maintain the quality of education for our children. So we also speak about the neglect of basic schools. Furthermore, we must not overlook the impact of basic schools or on basic schools rather. While the ministry's focus has largely been on primary schools and secondary institutions, the issue of basic schools has been conspicuously absent from their recovery plans. The argument is that basic schools are predominantly private institutions and that they should be exempt from support, or suggested that they should be exempt from support. So according to Section 13K of our Constitution, there is duty to provide foundational institutions with support, and it's not only concerning, but also a breach of our constitutional responsibilities. The ministry must address how it plans to support basic schools in the recovery process, especially since these schools play a crucial role in early childhood development. So we look at the timing of Hurricane Beryl and future risks. While we were fortunate that Hurricane Beryl struck before the start of the academic year, sparing us from greater disruption, this event highlights the fragility of our education system in the face of natural disasters. A later hurricane that is as impactful as Beryl, could have severely jeopardized our educational calendar. And with the growing threat of climate change, such events are likely to become more frequent and intense. So again, what is the plan for resilience? And this highlights the opposition's demand for a comprehensive school resilience plan. So we are at a critical juncture. The time has come to develop a comprehensive school resilience plan that prepares our educational institutions to withstand future disasters. This plan must go beyond mere rebuilding, and include great independence. So schools must be equipped with independent power sources, such as solar panels and backup generators, to ensure that they remain operational during and after disasters. The prolonged delays in restoring electricity by JPS in many communities underline the need for schools to have their own reliable power sources. Secondly, we look at water storage. In addition to power, schools should be equipped with water storage facilities capable of providing a minimum of 1 week's worth of water for school usage. This is critical to ensuring that basic hygiene and sanitation needs are met during emergencies when water supplies may be disrupted. We need to strengthen the infrastructure and look at proper retrofitting plans. So we must invest in stronger hurricane-resistant building materials and designs for our schools. So retrofitting existing structures to make them more resilient to high winds and flooding is essential for us. Comprehensive emergency preparedness plans, regular training and drills for our students, teachers, and staff on disaster preparedness and response. So in closing, while we recognize that the efforts made thus far are good, there is much more work to be done. So no child should be out of school or miss significant school time because of the hurricane. The opposition is committed to advocating for a robust, resilient, and inclusive education system that can weather the storms of both today and tomorrow. We call on the Ministry of Education to urgently address these concerns, provide transparent updates, and work collaboratively with all stakeholders to develop a comprehensive plan that ensures the safety and continuity of education for all Jamaican children. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I follow up on the points related to reopening, and I want to focus my comments on function. It's one thing to reopen and to have the doors open and so forth. It's another thing for that space to function as schools are supposed to function. So from what we know, and even what we can see from visits to schools, we know that schools are still lacking in terms of the resources they need to provide education. Some of the areas in which we see this need are in furniture. So some schools, even before Beryl, had a shortage, and some of them have had additional losses since. And so effective learning, we know, cannot take place if students do not have the proper seating and even the ability to write and to participate effectively in what's happening in the classroom. So we call on the ministry to urgently address this shortage and ensure that all schools are adequately furnished before reopening. And we know we only have a few days to reopening for most schools, but we still think there is time enough to get it done. Some schools struggled with infrastructural challenges before burial, and some of those continue. And so what we want to do is to suggest that while we focus, rightly so, on what burial has done, we also want to make sure those infrastructural challenges which existed before, roofs that were leaking, inadequate sanitation facilities, dilapidated classrooms, that these get priority as part of the process of preparing for the reopening of school. So the ministry must provide a comprehensive plan to address all outstanding repairs to schools to ensure that learning environments, and we cannot stress this enough. If you don't have conducive learning environments, then you're not going to get the learning that you require. And so this needs to be a priority as part of ensuring schools can function. We're also aware that some schools do not have sufficient books, and even in some cases, the contracts for rental of books have not been put in place. And in addition, some schools are not getting the books that they have requested. So a school might request 3 and get 1. So you get a third of what you're requesting. So again, we know from the evidence that in order for children to learn, they need books in the ratio of minimum 1 to 2 and for maximum 1 to 2. And for that to happen, the book rental scheme is critical. And so to give the schools less than they're demanding, less than they're requesting, is unacceptable. So again, the call to the ministry is to ensure that there is access to essential learning materials and that this be done as a matter of urgency so that schools can have the resources they need to function. We know very well, and Senator Crawford will talk in detail about the issue of teacher shortage. It's disruptive at best and ineffective in terms of practices at worst. If your school loses 1, 2, and in some cases, many more of their teachers. And so this shortage, it's been an issue for some time and continues to impact the ability of schools to deliver quality education. It is not unrelated to the other issues that we're seeing in schools, that we're seeing in CSEC and even the behavioral issues, which we're seeing in our schools. So we want the ministry to provide a clear plan to address this shortfall, particularly in rural and underserved areas, where we know it is more difficult to recruit and retain teachers. Without sufficient teachers, in a school with 5 teachers, if 1 is missing, that's 20% of the teachers. And so that disrupts what happens in the overall system. At the core, though, of these issues with infrastructure and so on, and the ability of schools to function, is the insufficient funding which schools are receiving. We have heard of schools which have made requests for funding and are receiving 1/3 of what they've requested. So imagine you know that you need $30 to run your school and you're giving 10. How do you make up the balance? And so the investment that is required to maintain and to ensure the day-to-day functioning of schools has to be looked at carefully. And we need to ensure, especially given the strains with burial and so forth, that the schools have the resources they need. Otherwise, we're setting them up to fail. Now, we can't talk about the functioning of schools if families are not ready, if families are not prepared to support their children in returning to school. We also know from the global evidence that when there is a shock such as that which we had with burial, education is likely to be the first thing that is affected. Don't be surprised if in September, when school starts, some of the older children are not returning to school because they're helping out at home with the family and so on. Imagine as well a family which had started, raising some chickens in order to prepare and have the money to send the children back to school. And then burial hits, killing those that were in the coop, spoiling those that were on the refrigerator, and preventing you from killing those which were old enough because you don't have the electricity to preserve them if you kill them. This disrupts the entire economic structure of the family. And so we know that the stress to families is severe. And in addition to that, the fact that you have what is an estimated 25% increase in the cost of school is a severe problem which we need to look at. And so we need support for families. We need to make sure, especially children who are on the PATH program. At the moment, the $280 per day that is provided for PATH needs to be looked at, because that is not sufficient for the schools to truly provide services to children. Families need support. And as part of that, we need to ensure that they are not put out financially, or they're supported to recover financially from what burial has caused. So the actions which we are asking the government to take to provide immediate funding for furniture and the resources that school need to function, not just open, but function, to complete the repairs, because again, we do not want these repairs to drag on into the school year, because it is going to be disruptive to the learning process. Ensure adequate book supply, meaning especially for the textbook, the textbook rental program. And this again is urgent. We don't want a situation where children are back in school and are frustrated because they don't have the resources. So the picture we're painting here, you should imagine returning to school, you don't have the desks and the chairs, the environment is not conducive, and you do not have the resources. Imagine being the teacher in that classroom, especially if a couple of your colleagues are no longer there. It's a recipe for disaster. In concluding, we just want to make the point that as an opposition, we remain committed to holding the ministry accountable, but also supporting the ministry in getting that which needs to be done in the best interest of our children. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to say a special thanks to my colleagues who have eloquently discussed some of the issues that we are facing. I want to expound in particular on the difference between the readiness to open and as well as the ability to function. Long before burial, we have always had yearly the conversation on the ability to function and not just the readiness to open. Indeed, because the school has a duty to deliver a functional and educational environment, it is important for us to differentiate opening and able to receive students and functioning and able to improve students. One of the major concerns as it relates to functioning has been once again underestimated by the Ministry of Education and the Minister of Education, who indicated that there is less anxiety towards the opening at school at this particular point in time, because for some reason or through some source, she has heard that the principals are not as anxious. The fact of the matter is, with school 7 days away, we should be much further than heard. And a truthful, factual report should have been coming from the ministry as to the current and the expected migration. I myself had conversations with many principals, as versus a recent article from the Ministry of Education that indicated that there was limited conversation between the government and the principals. And one employee of the ministry suggesting that speaking to the JTA would have been deleterious to the efforts that they had for importation of teachers, while this would be a necessary partner in ensuring that teachers who would become members of the JTA, because the Jamaica Teachers Association would not be reserved only to Jamaican teachers, but to teachers in Jamaica. So to that extent, we offer the opinion that the minister actually had limited conversation and is ill-informed to assume that the teacher migration is not currently a crisis. Indeed, it is the estimation from many principals and ourselves that the numbers will mimic last year and would surpass 1,400 persons who are leaving the classroom at this time. That 1,400 persons are being encouraged to travel to different spaces across the world, in particular the United States, the UK, Canada, and even the Middle East. And these teachers have been recruited because of the potential that the Jamaican teachers hold and the ability that they have to deliver. Instead of trying to have a teacher retention plan, the ministry and the minister have engaged on a teacher importation plan. And even with the teacher importation plan, it is very helter-skelter. It is very un, unplanned, and it is lacking further information that is necessary for us to judge on the impact that it will have. We read today in the newspaper that 27 Cubans or 28 Cuban teachers are now in Jamaica for the start of the school year. But for some reason, we have not seen in the media, in the social media or otherwise, the arrival of the much shouted about Ghanaian teachers that are supposed to be coming to Jamaica. Let's remember, school starts next week. These Ghanaian teachers should have been carried at a point that they could participate in summer school so they could acclimatize themselves to what is to expect from the teaching practice in Jamaica, from the students in Jamaica, and how comfortable they would be. We also have questions as to what is the number of Ghanaians that are supposed to come, and is this going to be sufficient to replace the 1,400 or to satisfactorily place a dent in the 1,400 additional teachers this year that we expect to migrate from the classroom. Additionally, we would like to know what are the contractual arrangements as it relates to time with the Ghanaian or any international teacher that we're recruiting. Is it a 3-year contract? It is a 1-year contract? And if there is such a contract, whom is the employer or the person that is going to seek to interview these individuals that are coming to Jamaica? Is this the mandate of the ministry or the mandate of the school through its board and through its principal, for whom many Jamaicans have to face the principal and the board for employment in that particular space and that particular school? The constant underestimation and underreporting of migration and the constant argument that for some reason there is not a crisis is one that we feel needs to be permeated and to properly investigated at this time. And so we call upon the ministry to ensure that they put a report of the number of persons that have left the classroom in the last 5 years in totality. For some reason, the government believes it is satisfactory to say a lot or less, none of which is an objective measure for us to work from. We also would like to know what is the number of posts that have not been filled for any period of time over the last 4 years. Now, it is important for us to differentiate simply not been filled as versus not been filled for any period of time. It is because education is assumed to be a cumulative effort, and therefore having missed a teacher for a semester, even if it is filled within the year, the student would be at a disadvantage. There are some reports that students that sat CXC mathematics last year in 5th form were without a teacher for 2 years, 3rd form and 4th form. And it is no wonder we're seeing the results that we're seeing. It has also been reported that in the sciences and in the vocational areas, we have also seen the impact of the absence of teachers. And principals are reporting now that even in physical education, we're seeing the unavailability and the mass migration of teachers in these areas. It is the opinion of the People's National Party that the first tranche of the effort to combat the negatives of teacher migration lies in our ability to retain our teachers. And this is against great recruitment drives because the world is estimated to be short of 44 million teachers. To that extent, we have some proposals that we believe should be a central cog of any teacher retention plan. These proposals, put together by myself and my team, has been educated by research into the migrating teachers, research that we have carried out, but also research by Canute Thompson, which have indicated some of the desires of persons who are migrating in search of better opportunity and a better life. One of them is to make housing more likely and more affordable for our teachers. It is imperative that the government immediately consult with the NHT to ascertain the probability of offering a higher threshold to teachers, maybe double the threshold to teachers, and an interest rate of no more than 3%. If it is that the teachers should leave the classroom, this loan directly transform into a natural bank loan with the natural interest rate, thereby creating a motive for the teacher to remain and to continue in the teaching service, and also creating a non-salary benefit that will be a reason for our teachers to find Jamaica a competitive space. We are also asking for a graduating concession program. A graduating concession program suggests that the longer you stay, it is a higher your concession rate for your motor vehicle, creating a greater possibility and probability to not only own a vehicle, but to own a vehicle of high quality and going forward. I can give a anecdotal conversation I had with a teacher in a Kingston school with a 96% pass in English language. And while on the phone having this conversation with this teacher, she had to cut the phone off to call a taxi to get to school. This teacher had a 96% pass in English language. There's no way those circumstances should be allowed to cause for a push factor for this teacher to leave our shores and a pull factor for other countries to attract a teacher having a 96% pass at a all-boys school in English language. So a graduating concession, 10% after 10 years, 5% after 5 years, 15% after 15 years, and 20% concession after 20 years, I believe would be another motive for teachers to stay. We also propose that the government immediately speaks with the Student Loan Bureau for a program of loan forgiveness for each year that the teacher remains in the classroom. So at the end of your year that you have completed as a teacher, you will get the year's loan forgiven, and next year, as you continue, that year's loan or payments, I'm sorry, would also be forgiven. Again, we call on the government to recognize that information is the basis of knowledge and knowledge is the root of education. And to that extent, we're asking for tools of trade to be applied to the internet services. And the recognition of the internet and thus access to information as a tool of trade, we feel that these should be made free to teachers so that they can have access to the necessary tools of trade. Immediately, while we're speaking to construction and recovery, there should be a focus on the improvement of the offices and the the areas that the teachers are using. We have seen where the police have been benefiting from improvements in the police station, and we believe that the teachers should equally benefit from improvements in their teachers' offices so that they can have greater comfort, but also greater efficiency and effectiveness. And finally, based on the teachers' desire to perform, very few teachers are happy with the outcomes of the CXC results, even though they have put their best effort, because systematically there have been some challenges, such as even the shortage of whiteboards in school. We haven't even graduated to a conversation of smart boards, but a simple shortage of whiteboards are not in schools for teachers to adequately and effectively offer their services. So to this extent, we are calling upon the government to immediately review and implement our teacher retention plan while they continue to seek other strategies and methodologies going forward to attract other teachers to our shores. We're also suggesting to this government that whatever the sweeteners that are being offered to persons that may be interested to come to Jamaica, those sweeteners must be added to this package for those persons who are willing to stay in Jamaica. We are saying to those who have stayed, thank you for staying and thank you for your service. However, we are also saying to those who have left, we remain willing and open for you to return to our shores and to continue to assist, as I know you want to, our students to improve. I now move to the conversation on the CXC's results. It is unfortunate that whenever the government intervenes in Jamaica's circumstances, we are likely to lose the CARICOM wars that have been happening on TikTok. Jamaica often is victorious until government entities have a role to play. And they say, oh, if you look at your infrastructure, we have to shut up for a little bit. When they say, oh, look at the education, we have to stop our eyes. Trinidad has a 45% outcome of persons receiving 5 subjects, including math and English. Jamaica had an 18%. So Trinidad is almost 3 times the functionality of Jamaica's situation. My 2 colleagues have indicated some of the reasons. And unfortunately, governments have tried to blame the teachers for this outcome without looking at the simple fact that our current contribution per student at the secondary level has not changed for almost 6 years, despite the inflationary impact and despite the reality that it was not sufficient at that time. For those in the secondary school, per child, they're receiving 17,000 Jamaican dollars. That should last for 10 months of education on average. And that 10 months of education average will mean that per month, that 17,000 becomes 1,700 with 20 days of education within the month. It means that 1,700 becomes 170 divided by 2. That is $85 per day. $85 per day. Yes, 80 times 8 is 160, 5 times 5, but yes, 170. Yes, so $85 per day is incapable of satisfactorily educating our students and creating programs necessary for our students. One of our major concerns that exists is the mathematics outcomes, and we have just done some mathematics, and I see you're still working on it. Am I correct today? Okay, thank you very much. Now, the mathematics is a problem that we're facing because we have seen where we are about 33% of the persons that have took mathematics have been able to be successful in that mathematics. We call upon the ministry to do the adequate research into the reason for these outcomes, because in addition to the small number that have been successful, the vast majority would have what we call scrape through. They'd have gotten A3. And I congratulate those who get anything that is a pass. But we must analyze that the majority of our children, even those who pass, would have been on the brink of that success. Of the 31,325 that took the exam, mathematics, 2,264 were actually absent, did not show up for the exam. 374 received a grade so low, it was termed ungraded. A 6 was received by 113. A 5 was received by 8,306. A 4 was received by 10,232, the highest number of any category. A 3 was received by 4,875, a 2 by 3,078, and a 1 by 2,076. I then tried to do my own analysis as to what could be the cause of this circumstance. And to this extent, I went back to this cohort's first exam that would have been publicly reported. That would have been the 4th grade numeracy in 2017. In 2017, the 4th grade numeracy was 66% at that time. Then I moved to 2019, this cohort's PEP mathematics would have been 41%. And it goes to explain, therefore, one of the reasons that we may have this cohort CXC maths being at 36%. In doing the analysis, I became very concerned because even at the PEP level, high proficiency was only 2,624 of the 40,000 students that did the exam. So high proficiency would have been 2,624, and almost 37,000 would not have been in the category of high proficiency. More unfortunate, just simple proficiency, 23,700 did not at that time achieve simple proficiency. Why is this analysis important? It shows that very little remedial effort was taken between when we saw there was a problem in grade 4 and again saw that there was a problem in grade 6. And we waited until the problem really starts to show itself with limited ability to remediate in grade 11. That has caused for many not to be able to matriculate to the university, and for us to have 18% having 5 subjects, including math and English, compared to Trinidad, who is 45%, and I'm still awaiting the Barbados. My analysis also showed that those who got a 1 in CXC mathematics, 2,076, seems to be in correlation with those that were highly proficient in PEP, 2,624. What I also have a major concern, and the team have a major concern about, was that this cohort at PEP had 40,000 entrants approximately, but this cohort at CXC had 31,000, which also include non-school participants. So the school-only participants
might legitimately be about 25 to 26,000. So 14,000 would not have even sat the exam between the age of 12 and the age of 18. Immediate research needs to be implemented as to where has these students gone? What has happened to these students? Because the total cohort for this 11th grade would have been 34,000 approximately, while the cohort at the time that they were in 6th grade would have been 40,000 approximately. Are these the persons we're seeing at the age group standing at the stoplights, wiping the windscreens? Are these the persons that we're seeing not attending schools? Are these the persons who have migrated? And of those who were of the higher proficiency levels, is there a greater retention than those who were at the lower proficiency levels? We call therefore for a comprehensive review and a strategic plan, which should include concepts such as a inverted classroom, where the homework for mathematics in particular is done in a class setting. It is ridiculous and foolish for us to continue to send a student in 11th grade with a probability homework or a quadratic equation homework or a functions and relation homework to parents who are 9th grade dropouts. It is impossible for them to find assistance and find help for practice that will lead to their improvement. And so the principle of the inverted classroom, we're calling upon the government to consider that for homework centers and homework sessions to be placed in the schools. We would also want for some analysis to be done on the lunch participation for those who failed versus those who passed, for nutrition and the analysis of the impact of nutrition. We would like to see what were their progress from primary school, what were their grades for those who passed in the literacy and numeracy versus those who failed. What were the grades at the PEP and the level of proficiency for those who passed, for those versus those who failed? What's the single parent reality for those who passed versus those who failed? What is the distance traveled to school for those who passed versus those who failed? What is the allocation that was being made for their PEP, for their PATH programs, the members and participants for those who passed as versus those who failed? And is there any negative social impacts such as bullying, etc., that has been happening? We feel that this is necessary for us to eventually compete. And we guarantee the public that in 5 years of our leadership, we will be effectively and efficiently competing with Trinidad and Barbados in the 45%, more so than languishing at the 18%. Thank you.
So we are now open for questions. So if you're online and you have a question that you wish to ask of the presenters, please indicate by raising your hand. I will identify you, you unmute, and you pose your question. If you're in the room and you wish to pose a question, please indicate and I will come to you. Well, the first question is from Siobhan Campbell from Nationwide, and it's to you, Senator Crawford. He said, Senator Crawford, should the current issues surrounding math and English be declared a national crisis, and what more can be done to address it?
Thank you very much. Well, yes, it is a national crisis because there's no place for the uneducated in our future. If you look at the realities of work, muscle have been replaced by the mind. And those who used to go and mix cement on a construction site, more and more are being replaced by a premix truck. Those who used to go to chop bush on the sidewalk has been replaced by a weed whacker. And those who used to offer their services to wash clothes have been replaced by a washing machine. So the opportunities for earning are reducing continuously and dramatically for those who are not able to offer to matriculate to tertiary education. And the impacts of that have also shown itself to be of great benefit to our society. We are committed to our policy of 1 degree per household because we have seen that the households with degrees are less participants in violence and criminal activity. The household with degrees are less suffering from malnutrition and the lack of food. The household with degrees are less suffering from the ability to seek and find health care. And the household with degrees are less likely to have illiterate children who are incapable to maximize their potential. If we are to have a degree per household, then matriculating to the university is a necessary component, and that matriculation would include mathematics and English. So this is a crisis because it would be equivalent to the United States saying 18% of their students got their GED. 5 subjects, including math and English, is the equivalent of the US GED for the Jamaican circumstance and the Jamaican system. And to that extent, the United States would have said it is a crisis. And I see no reason why we should not apply that term at this particular point in time when the vast majority of the outcomes of the system is failure more than success.
There's another question for you, Senator Crawford. Are there any schools that are not likely to be opened next week due to hurricane damages?
Yeah, from what we know, there are some schools that are unlikely to open. Part of the point we made earlier on was that we know that there were some 100 plus priority 1 schools, and the ministry had said most, but we don't have specific numbers. But as an example, Titchfield, Happy Grove, unlikely to open next week based on where they are with their repairs. That's our understanding. And we know there are other cases such as this. And so that's why we've asked the ministry to come forward, explain to the nation, and to give details as to which ones. But in addition, to provide some information on what will happen with those schools, what's the time frame, how much flexibility do the schools have, and the implications for the 190 days that are required for schools to be open. So it requires the ministry to show leadership in this regard. And as I said earlier on, we also need to ensure that these repairs do not drag on for the entire term or into the next term. It needs to be done with urgency.
Senator Crawford, Siobhan Campbell from Nationwide has a follow-up. He's asking, as a follow-up, based on your statements today, do you see the issue as mostly a socioeconomic issue and not a matter of teaching?
Well, as a researcher myself, I prefer to do research. I have hypotheses as to what may be the problem. I do not believe it's a matter of teaching because our teachers are being globally recruited. The quality of our teachers are being proven by the level of recruitment that many developed countries are taking for our teachers. They could recruit from many other places and have chosen our teachers because of the quality of our teachers. But regardless of how good a teacher is, we have an absentee rate in the rural area of 63%, a attendance rate of 63%, and an absentee rate of therefore 37%. That is what you call chronic absenteeism. And chronic absenteeism is actually calculated at 10%. And so when we're at 37%, no matter how good a teacher is, if the child is absent for factorization, I as a math teacher would have grave difficulty teaching quadratic equation, which is based on factorization. And if he's absent from trigonometry, I'll have great difficulty teaching vectors, which is based on Pythagoras theory. So therefore, the absence is one. In the urban areas, is not much better. We're at an attendance rate of 82%, which suggests that throughout our country, we're having chronic absenteeism. Added to that, regardless of the quality of the teacher, if the child is not having had a meal, for which reports and research has indicated 33% of Jamaican children arrive at school hungry. Not get hungry while at school, but arrive at school hungry. A person who is an animal person like myself, and human beings are animals, would know that the animal have 2 functions, sustenance and performance. And whenever the animal isn't properly fed, it prioritizes sustenance over performance. In education, learning is performance. At the time that the child is trying to simply survive, head on the decks, not focusing, not concentrating, and ends whatever conversation the teacher have when they say the area of a circle is pi r square with just the conversation of the pie, because he has not had any food from morning, is a unfortunate situation. And this is being rectified by the government offering 3 days of meal, not 5 days of meals. So to pass on those things to the teacher when they have no calculator, they have no geometry set, they have no book, as my colleagues have indicated, that many schools have not received a book from their requests at this particular point in time. And school starts next week. So how would you blame a teacher who can't give homework to students who don't have those books? or as the ministry have indicated, that they have invested in ebooks when they have no equipment and they have no internet in the classroom. And so there are no power in some places. These are ridiculous proposals that have tried to pass on what is a systematic problem, a policy problem that we will solve to our teachers. And our teachers are anxiously awaiting for efficient former teachers like ourselves to come and direct the policy at the Ministry of Education.
There's a simple,
Just a quick addition on this crisis question. I'm glad you mentioned we're former teachers. This is actually 32 years ago, I started teaching at a primary school, Fort George Primary. The question of a crisis, it doesn't start at secondary. And I hope as a country, we recognize that. It doesn't start when we see the CSEC results. This goes back much further. And the numbers that Senator Crawford set out showed that there is some, if we start earlier to identify the problem, then we could do a lot more. The problem at the moment is that we're waiting. We have the data, we're not using it. And so while we want a strong partnership between homes, they have a critical role to play. When parents are involved, it makes a massive difference. But we also know, as you said, what happens in the classroom, time on task, what happens with the teacher, preparation of the teacher, continuous professional development, etc. Those are things that need to be ongoing. So we need to be data-driven, and we need to make sure that from the early stages, which is why we made the point earlier on about the basic schools, that they're being ignored while these are the community institutions that are providing services to the very young. We need to ensure that across the board, we're starting early and we're continuing to support children as they matriculate from one level to the other of the education system. So the crisis is not only at secondary level, it cuts across the different levels of the system.
Dr. Russell, while you're at the mic, a question for you. The need for immediate funding for repairs was mentioned. Can you elaborate on the estimated costs and whether repairs could have been completed prior to the start of the new year, given the recency of Hurricane Beryl?
The estimated cost for the repairs would have been provided by the government if I understand the question properly. Is it about the impact of Beryl and the probability of reopening?
We'll ask for a follow-up on that.
Yes,
Senator
please.
Crawford, Alicia Willis from the Jamaica Observer is asking, what is your assessment of PEP as an assessment tool? Should there be an overhaul? Do you believe teachers are able to convey the content in a way that students are able to grasp?
There needs to be a review of all processes because the system is creating more failures than passes. If there was a factory with a machine and the machine is creating the odd outcome that is good, as versus the odd outcome that is bad, the machine would have been reviewed in totality and possibly discarded in some way. I was speaking to an individual recently that says the system is not sick. The system is working as it was intended, which was for most of us not to pass. Therefore, the system don't need to be fixed. It needs to be replaced with a more effective and efficient system. As it relates to PEP, the PEP examinations, the ministry continues to seek to find whatever hoop it can jump through to suggest each year that there's an improvement, including comparing it with incorrect years, and even this year, finding segments and groups that have never existed before in any form of an analysis. It is right for us to accept where we are, and having accepted where we are, to then work on improving. I also feel that the focus on having a rounded student have somehow caused us to shift away from the necessity of having a numerate and literate student. And there needs to be some analysis of the first 6 years of primary school, the 3 years of basic school, and the first 1,000 days of a child's life as to how we are going to ensure that they're numerate and literate, and then contribute to their roundedness, which is a necessary part, but I believe that it has been skewed away from the focus on literacy and numeracy into a constant effort for a rounded person with exposure to every single thing. And once they can read, especially now with information at our fingertips, rounded is quicker to achieve than numeracy and literacy if it is a problem.
Okay, the final question we're seeing here, it's a two-part question. Do you have specific numbers on the teacher resignations and migrations as at the end of August? And how confident are you that the current training programs for teachers are adequate to equip them with the necessary skills and knowledge to effectively impart education to students, particularly in light of the comments made by Dr. Samuel McDaniel about the need for a complete overhaul of primary education? It's a third part, students are complaining that although they are financially unable to sponsor higher education, the Student Loan Bureau is putting programs on them that they can't sponsor. Is this something your government will be looking to redo?
It's hard to respond because I've heard about 9 different questions in one. So the first one is the numbers on teacher migration. The estimates from the principals that we have had conversation with is approximately 1,400 this year. We are facing some schools with 8 and 9, and every single avenue has indicated that the minister's pronouncement is untrue. One of those avenues is the number of advertisements in the newspapers on a Sunday. So therefore, the number of advertisement, 8 per school, 7 per school, indicates that the estimate of less migration is unlikely. If we look at 1,160 schools at the secondary level, and we talk about 7 per school, that is 7 times 100, 700, and 6 sevens 42, that's already 1,120. So 112? You can, right, yeah, all right, good, all right. So therefore, we're just looking at 6, and we're seeing those availabilities up to 13 in some schools. I want to also exaggerate on the point, because when one teacher is absent at the secondary level, it impacts 160 students because it is 4 cohorts of 40. So the average teacher who is teaching at a high school would teach upper school 10 and 11, or lower school 7, 8, and 9. And at 10 and 11, we'll have 210 and 211, for which would have been 160 students, one teacher. So when we're talking about 1,000 or 800 or any kind of machinations of a 50 here or 50 there, the impact isn't dramatically shifted when you talk about anything over 800 leaving in accumulation to what left last year and what left the year before and the year before. So therefore, that is a major problem. And we estimate, as I said, 1,400 approximately. And the only individual that doesn't see a crisis is a government, because the JTA sees a crisis. With real full ignorance. The principal sees a crisis. The gleaner and the observer in their advertisement sees a crisis. And the parents and the students are seeing a crisis. So yes, we believe there's a crisis. As I said, we're committed to 1 degree per household, because we understand the developmental impact of degrees coming out of the society, the percent of degrees being held by the society. And our escape as our society is to become a knowledge economy. That is our greatest competitive advantage, because of its lack of dependence on scale, for which we are not able to compete based on us being a small island. And so that knowledge society, we want to shift from 17% having the tertiary experience, and that will mean, as I said earlier, matriculation. I want to also speak to the teachers being prepared. As the curriculum change, the preparation changes. As technology change, the preparation changes. I've seen some technology that can automatically grade handwritten schoolwork. Therefore, teachers will have to be retrained in using that technology. So there is, as my colleague said, a constant need for continuous development of our teachers. They are able, they are capable. And if it is that we have proper policy, I'm sure that they will be benefiting and will then benefit our society. So in total, I think that there is adequate capacity at our teachers' colleges, and we feel that they will be able to improve as we need them to. The other final recommendation I think that must be considered as it relates to teacher availability is using HEART for a teacher stream, because the vocational persons at HEART at level 2, level 3 can be used for teaching vocational subjects. And there is a space for employment called a specialist employment in the schools, the high schools. And so therefore, with a shortage of vocational teachers, we believe that HEART could have a teaching stream for those who are level 3, level 4, with some adequate introduction to teaching methodologies that could mitigate some of those problems that we are currently facing.
The last bit of that question was,
Yes.
Yeah. Two quick points. Well, probably picking up first on Senator Crawford's point regarding just exploring alternatives. We have also seen from the teacher training institutions that they have been crying out for an investment in their infrastructure and to make them better able to attract, to retain, and to support the continuous professional development of teachers. So we cannot overemphasize where we are, because look, 44 million teachers. I think the US needs 225,000 by 2025. We cannot sit here and pretend as though we're going to import our way out of this issue. Because if you're losing 1,400 and you're bringing in 200 or whatever, and if you're controlling centrally how you bring in, while there's a free market to come and poach your teachers, it's just not going to work out. And if that continues, we're going to continue. So this comprehensive retention plan that we've spoken about is really, really, really critical.
Senator Crawford, the last bit was about the student loan
I'm
bureau.
really not hearing you.
Pardon?
I'm not hearing you.
Okay, the last question, well, third part of that last question was regarding the Student Loan Bureau offering students loan options that, let me read it as it was written, loan options that do not suit their lifestyle and their financial capacity.
Yeah.
Will your government be looking at addressing the offerings from the Student Loan Bureau?
I'm very confident that our government will look at that, because the leader of the party, Mark Golding, has consistently spoken about the need to review and revise how student loan operates. He was one of those first persons to speak to no guarantors to be necessary for those who are of a lower level income, who might not know persons who qualify as a guarantor. That was one of his proposals. But he has also made the proposal that the salary should be tied to the repayment. And so therefore the repayment should be 8% of salary and start when you are earning, and not start as you graduate because you might not be able to pay. So he has been at the forefront of having conversation as to how student loan can be made more effective to our students. And with our expertise and our knowledge, and with the support of principals and the ministry employees who are also waiting our arrival, we will be able to find effective solutions.
All right, that's it for the questions, Senator Crawford. Thank you so much for joining us for this press conference. If you have further questions, please contact us on our social media pages, as well as the social media pages for Dr. Kenneth Russell, Wayne Strawn, and Senator Damon Crawford, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Jamaica, the land of beauty, was built on solid rock. The labor rights, them trying to wreck we. On them, Jamaica turn them back. Hey, Jamaica, step out and vote PNP. Marky G is all that we need. Jamaica will be back slow. Marky G is the way to go. Labor right, them look dull. Them look dull. You should have heard the labor right, them a ball. Bro, God, the ship is sinking. Bro, God, the sea look rough. Oh, yeah. The gas tank almost empty from we left the city. The high pressure really low. Nigel abandoned the ship. Jamaica no stay on it. It's sinking very slow, very slow. Oh no, bro, God don't know what to do. Whoa, whoa. This is Crazy J, singing from out of Jamaica, the land of wood and water. people. With the captain, them call him Brogard. For 2 terms, them full up of greed. Nigel Clark start stepping away. Labor right chief start rock away. Somebody call Brogard because this really look bad. Labor right a ball when things start to fall. Hold me head when me hear somebody call. Labor right, this ship is sinking. Brogard, the sea look rough. Oh yeah. The gas tank almost empty from we left the city. The high pressure really low. Nigel abandoned the ship. Jamaica no stay on it. It's sinking very slow, very slow. Oh no, bro, God don't know what to do. Whoa, whoa. Jamaica, the land of beauty, was built on solid rock. The labor rights, them trying to wreck we. On them, Jamaica turn them back. Hey, Jamaica, step out and vote PNP. Marky G is all that we need. Jamaica will be back slow. Marky G is the way to go. Labor right, them look dull. Them look dull. You should have heard the labor right, them a ball. Bro, God, the ship is sinking. Bro, God, the sea look rough. Oh yeah. The gas tank almost empty from we left the city. The high pressure really low. Nigel abandoned the ship. Jamaica no stay on it. It's sinking very slow, very slow. Oh no, bro, God don't know what to do. Whoa, whoa. This is Crazy J, singing from out of Jamaica, the land of wood and water. The labor rights are luxury liner, hailing Jamaican people. With the captain, them call him Brogard. For 2 terms, them full up of greed. Nigel Clark start stepping away. Labor right chief start rock away. Somebody call Brogard because this really look bad. Labor right a ball when things start to fall. Hold me head when me hear somebody call. Labor right, this ship is sinking. Brogard, the sea look rough. Oh yeah. The gas tank almost empty from we left the city. The high pressure really low. Nigel abandoned the ship. Jamaica no stay on it. It's sinking very slow, very slow. Oh no, bro, God don't know what to do. Whoa, whoa. Jamaica, the land of beauty, was built on solid rock. The labor rights, them trying to wreck we. On them, Jamaica turn them back. Hey, Jamaica, step out and vote PNP. Marky G is all that we need. Jamaica will be back slow. Marky